This podcast is brought to you in association with Small Beer Limited, Britain's leading cask ale and craft beer wholesaler. Head to all the W's, smallbeerwholesale.co.uk. Now on with the show. Hello and welcome back to the Gone Off on a Tangent podcast, but this time with one of our special episodes in a series we like to call Whatever Floats Your Goat. It gives us a chance to chat to someone from the world of sport / life and a break from our usual sweary nonsense. As always, I'm here. DT is here.
Hello.
Carl is not here, didn't turn up. Wilson is here.
Hello again.
And our guest this time is ex-professional rugby player and all-round bloody nice bloke, Greg Bateman. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you very much for having me.
First impressions of the office /
surrounded.
It's definitely
studio.
one of the most professional setups I've been in, for sure.
You're massive, so the room's got significantly smaller, and I mean that in the politest possible way.
Wow.
Yeah,
Easy.
He's bigger than you, pal.
What a
Yeah.
welcome. What a
that's what I
welcome.
mean.
I mean, you're a unit, but he could take you,
Well, we did used to play rugby.
granted. We'll learn all about it in a bit, because we were just saying before we clicked record, we don't know a lot about rugby.
No.
So could be a lesson for all of us.
I'm not sure I've got a lot to teach you, mate. I did say I'd set you up, but you just tried to set yourself up with that gag. So
All I know is it isn't a prerequisite to be good at rugby to play rugby, is it? Just got to get right into the mire. And now you're giving me the eyes.
Well, no, I'm trying to understand the question. So you don't need to.
You have to be good at rugby to play rugby. You just need to have the bollocks the size of stones.
I mean, I think that's positional dependent.
Got a quote here from Rob Eastwood, Small Beer MD, and sponsor of this fine podcast. Greg is one of the best players in the game that didn't get an international cap.
Well, he's absolutely right.
High praise, isn't it? High praise.
I praise indeed.
So who were the international managers while you were playing?
Well, it depends which nation we're talking about, because how do I cover this? I was selected to play for Wales twice. The first time, I was, obviously over the moon. My grandmother was Welsh, God rest her soul, and I was, super excited. And they said, "Yep, we're going to pick you for the autumn series, just against like the All Blacks, South Africa, biggest teams ever." And I was kind of like, "Wow, that could be amazing. I'm going to get killed, but it'll be great." And when I sort of met up with the coaches, management of Wales, sort of explained, my grandmother adopted my mother as a baby. So it's not a bloodline, but she's like my grandma. Do you know what I mean? It's not like I came off the boat and was adopted and got a passport. And they said, "Oh, yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. No problem." A few weeks later, I get a phone call saying, "Really sorry, but we can't actually take you, because the World Rugby rules are that you have to have a blood relation to be able to play for us or any nation. But we think that's really unfair, so we're going to go to World Rugby and get the rule changed. We're going to get an ex-High Court judge, and we'd like you and your agent to come with us as like a case in point." So I'm like, not played international rugby before, like just had a couple of good seasons at Leicester. And my agent was like, "No fucking way, because if they change..." Am I allowed to swear on this?
Oh,
yeah.
Because if they change the any laws or rules or whatever, they never do it for that person. It's for the people behind you. Plus, if they say no and then England or whoever come along, you're like, you tried to be Welsh, but you couldn't be Welsh, and now you're whatever. So he said, "Look, just don't do it. Let that happen in the background." So to be honest, I was obviously very disappointed, but kind of let it go-ish. And then I got a phone call before the Six Nations the following year. Great news! We've got the law changed, and we're going to pick you in the Six Nations. Because I'm one of those rare creatures that I played multiple positions in the front row.
It's in the notes, mate. Don't worry.
No worries. The only player in the Premiership to start in all three.
That wasn't in the notes.
But if you think about for World Cup squads, that's really valuable, right? Because you're suddenly not having to pick 9 forwards to cover 3 positions. You can have a bit of flexibility. So it was obviously of interest, but unfortunately, and I know this isn't in the sort of narrative way of how we're going to discuss my turbulent life, but my life kind of fell apart in the 6 months between then and now, or at this point, getting called up. And I just wasn't well enough to go and was just like, this is not happening. So was picked for Wales twice, and weirdly, Eddie Jones just never had my number, which is just odd, you know. But no, yes, I wholly agree with Rob.
Eddie Jones. Just an excuse to that impression.
Yeah,
I've nailed that now.
Talking about, mate.
He's a character, isn't he? All that stuff in the World Cup where he was supposedly talking to Japan and stuff, I loved all that. Loved all that drama.
I think...
Because he definitely was.
I mean, I met him once briefly when I went to go and see a couple of mates at Syon Park while they were in Six Nations camp, and I was floating around London. Just said, club sandwich, because obviously the RFU pay for that. It was a passing kind of hello. And Cockers was there actually as well, walked past. He was my coach at Leicester, Richard Cockerell. And I said, Cockers, I heard you're short tomorrow. I've got my boots in my bag. Fuck off. But actually, Eddie's a really interesting... If you listen to some of his longer form content that he's done, he's really, really interesting. And his mindset to coaching is amazing. And I think, unfortunately, in this social media world we live in, we get sound bites. Yeah. And he does come across great or awful, depending on which side of the fence that you sit on.
How the video's been clipped.
Yeah. But I think if you listen to his sort of philosophy, he knows what he's trying to do. And having mates that have worked with him have said that he's unbelievable. Also, I've had mates that have worked with him and said he's terrible. However, they haven't been picked every week in, week out. And if you ask me who my favourite coaches are, they're the ones that pick me every week. So it's quite hard to know.
He did a podcast with Simon Jordan that I listened to. That's about 60 minutes, very long form. And you're right, he was captivating. It was very interesting to hear how he wants to win rugby matches and where he felt it had gone wrong and right and the reasons for that. And fascinating bloke. If you get a chance, go listen to it. It is really interesting.
Yeah, it's very good.
I can't remember what his podcast is called. It doesn't need our plug.
It's sponsored by one of the high street gambling.
It is indeed, yeah.
Billiam.
I don't bet with him. So let's go right back. How did it start in terms of rugby? How did you get into it? Why? All the usual low ball questions.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've done one of these on the career, I suppose. But I would have been like most other 6 or 7 year old kids that have got 2 left feet, and the dad said they can't play football. So he was just like, well, you just need some kind of team sport, some structure to go and have a go. And to be honest, it was just always something I did until 14-ish, something like that, where the age group stuff started to come in, the county, and I suddenly sort of was on some books of a club. And
where were you based? Sorry, Greg. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Surrey.
Surrey, okay.
And I think rugby's like an amazing game because it's amateur and professional at the same time for such a long period of time until you then become professional, and it's largely amateur with a little bit of professionalism, if you know what I mean. Because it's so far from a professional sport, it's ridiculous. But in answer to your first question, 6-7, Camberley RFC.
In you go.
Yeah, that's it. Done.
I remember as a kid I used to play football. So one of the dads said to me, you should come play rugby. And it's not about 5 years later I realised he was basically calling me fat. Because he was like...
shit at football.
And no, I was good at football. Behave yourself. But clearly his son played. And then I realised, okay, makes sense. Quite big shoulders. He didn't know I'm an absolute coward. But other than that... I fit the bill. Did you boys play at school?
I played at school.
You're a unit. You give it a go.
What, rugby?
No, hockey.
No, well, I tried it once, but I was just more of a kicker. I wanted the glory, really.
What's that finesse position? What's a 10? Scrum half.
Fly off, isn't it?
Fly off.
Fly off. I do think that there is something quite important with what you guys have just talked about, is that rugby is actually an incredibly skillful game, and we need players, we need participation to increase massively for rugby to be sustainable in the future. And rugby has this amazing thing that it's kind of the game for all shapes and sizes, and that's true, because people like me can make a living out of being sports people, which is just genius, isn't it? But you know, when you develop through into age groups, there's lads that often convert late from cricket or football or one of those sports, because obviously very few people make it through into football. But we need to somehow find a way of making participation at younger age groups easier. And some of that is because the game's really complicated, and I did it for a long time. I'm not sure I understand everything that happens in a game, to be honest, because you just stick your head out for a scrum and realise you're 60 metres backwards. But I think it is quite a complicated game that makes it hard, whereas football, you know, you can pick up a ball, jumpers for goalposts, you can go and play with your mates, can't you? It's pretty simple. So some of it's around the complication, but also you need 15 people, you need substitutes because of the contact, and contact is really poorly coached at age group level. You know, watching the local team where I'm based, and it's all just smash it and get them as hard as you can and all the rest of it, and that is how people get hurt, and that's why people stop playing the game, because it's quite a violent and fundamentally quite unsafe game. So it's not ideal to have it so badly coached.
Is it the same for rugby league? And it's not necessarily a world you've been in, but is it the same up north? Are they struggling to get? Because it's obviously a slightly different game in terms of less scrums, but there's still ridiculous impact and contact and. Yeah,
the honest answer is I don't know, because you know nobody wants to run into elbows for 35 grand a year. But, no, I'm sure they get paid more than that. But the rugby league is simpler. That's why it's played up north, right? Actually, does Lincoln count as north?
No. It
depends if you below it.
Where does north start? Because you're north to me.
Well, I would say
slap bang in the middle, aren't we?
Yeah, the Midlands is a lost world, isn't it? Let's be honest. We're not northern in the because my family's all from Yorkshire, which when I go up there, it feels like a different world. Everyone's a bit more friendlier. Sorry, guys.
Proper tight.
Yeah.
Don't pay for anything. Yeah. But they've got different traditions and stuff. And then I think definitely anything south of Lincoln feels like the south, as it were, like Peterborough, Cambridge definitely.
We're the fence, aren't we?
Yeah, we
fence.
we stop the northerners getting into your world, and we stop you boys from getting really confused why we've got head knob here, that sort of stuff, as you go further north. And we're like we're the Midlands. We're a weird old world.
As it were.
We're the gateway. We're the gateway county.
Yeah.
Hasn't he got that in marketing? Put it on the flag. So in terms of sport, though, there's no rugby league played here at all. No, it is union, if anything, sport-wise.
Yeah, your closest would be Huddersfield or someone like that, wouldn't it, from here?
In terms of league?
Yeah.
Hull, probably. Hull, the road,
Hull,
yeah. But both of their teams, probably the nearest. Yeah. Sheffield don't play much in Sheffield, do they? They used to have a team, I'm sure, but years ago. And it's all that M62 corridor, isn't it?
Be the Rhinos other than that, wouldn't it?
Rhinos, yeah. Leeds be about an hour and a half from here. So yeah, Hull would be the nearest, but...
So really, we're all talking about something we have no idea about, but yeah.
Well, I grew up watching it, because my dad's big into it. He was a Batley Bulldogs fan. But other than that, I never really watched Union as a kid, really, other than like everyone like won World Cups and stuff are on. But in terms of participation, it's quite a good county for Union. There's a lot of club, small response one actually. It definitely played at our school.
Well, Midlands is particularly good for rugby generally. It is pretty strong, but that's largely driven because you've got two very good Premiership clubs. Well, no, one very good Premiership club and Saints in the Midlands. So you've got that aspirational element to it as well. So if you think about, say, Bournemouth, there's not a lot of rugby union played in Bournemouth.
Because everyone's 86.
But having said that, then if you start going west, Dorset, Cornwall, Devon...
It's quite big down there, isn't it?
Way more rugby than there is football. But Chiefs have been, within the last 15 years, have been the shining star for that.
We're probably a terrible example because there's not much talent in Lincolnshire. We don't produce a lot other than potatoes, if I'm honest. We might produce some rugby players that we don't know, but in terms of other sports... who's the most famous cricketer from Lincolnshire, would you say, Dan? It's your world, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not really been.
Definitely not a footballer. We might be able to claim Kevin Keegan.
Yeah.
Telling Scunthorpe, I think.
No,
Other than that,
the list is pretty small.
yeah, it's just one of those counties. It's just such a massive county. But yeah, Leicester's what, an hour and a bit. So everyone over this way is a Tigers fan. If they're into rugby, got a lot of our listeners are Tigers fans. Not so much Northampton, but yeah, a lot of Tigers fan. And then obviously when, but the
I like how you say
really
a lot of our listeners. I know of two.
All two of them.
We're allowed to embellish, Dan. That's at the very least.
Nah, just be honest, mate.
At the very least, wax some mustard on it, mate. Come on.
No, we've been honest about how little we know about rugby. We've
No,
definitely.
I feel like that is important in case anybody stumbles onto this podcast to listen to you, and then is basically like, "What are those three dickheads on about?"
Oh, give some of their
Why
old
did you-
stuff a listen to.
Why did you get in a room with those three fucking idiots? Which we'll come on to later. How you met us three idiots. So in terms of we obviously have a football background loosely in terms of following it. So that transition from the academy system in football we're quite aware of. How does it work in rugby? Is it similar? You get picked up by a club into their academy system and then work your way through.
Yeah, it's probably an area of the game that's needs addressing, but you generally, at sort of 14, 15 through to, 18 is when you're in the sort of development stuff. So you go into school and all the rest of it, and you're doing Tuesday, Thursday nights, playing for your club team at the weekend.
And you're allowed to play for school, and because in football they restrict that.
Yeah,
So you have to stop everything you're doing and just play for academy.
exactly. So, but because there's not enough academy games, they don't always, have fixtures at the weekend. And to be fair, it's been a long time since I was in that position. But then what happens at 18 is you then end up taking an academy contract, which is pretty shocking. But you're then full-time training with the first team, and you might go out on loan to, from Tigers, you'd go out to Leicester Lions, or, go and play men's rugby. That's what you need to do. But one of the major problems then after sort of 18 to 20 is you sort of a little bit too old to go and do that, and you're not going to, because those teams will sort of help the feeder team as a feeder team to the bigger one out. But then when you make it past that, you need to be playing regular rugby. That's what actually makes you better. And much like any sport, you see that with young footballers, right? You end up in academy and you just play under 18s, under 19s, under 20s or whatever.
You only really start to develop when you start playing against.
Once you reach 21, if
Yeah.
you've not made it to the first team, must be the same. You need to find another club because
You just need to find regular
regular football.
football,
Yeah.
opportunity, don't you?
Yeah, rugby's slightly different in that positional wise, like they don't chuck 18-year-old front rowers out there so much anymore. That it does take a little bit of time, just because if you threw an 18, 19-year-old against a 38-year-old Dan Cole, like it's a tough Saturday afternoon, and it's probably not great for your development. But I think that where we want rugby to get to is to have this sort of opportunities for players where they're just playing more. And what worked really well previously, and probably the last example of it for an England player, was Nick Easter, who played for Gwynns and then England, but he didn't have an academy system or anything like that. He just came through the national leagues, played his way up, got to the championship, then got picked up by Gwynns, and then was suddenly playing for England.
So you just played lots of men's rugby, come through the system.
and
Not the system, but
it's harmed the championship as well. So the championship, apart from the RFU pulling a load of the funding out, the championship clubs are struggling because they don't have the good players, because they're getting picked up in academy systems, and that they're just sort of lost in this ether. Whereas actually, if you look at what would be a good example, like American football in the States, right? They have a really solid college football system. Have you ever seen videos of college football in America?
it's massive.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't
He's
it?
a massive.
80
You're a
Yeah,
massive
I'm a big
fan,
NFL fan. I don't watch a lot of the college game, but I've seen enough and Netflix documentary for days. But 80, 90,000 fans.
Amazing. And that is their equivalent of like the championship, but we're getting like 1,500 people to watch Donny. You know what I mean? If that. And it could be really good rugby, and you could have lots of these players that aren't starting in the Premiership every week or on the fringe or whatever, helping backfill, and that helps then get participation up because the standard's improving. Yet it's a bit of a virtuous circle, but in this sort of mad race for, we want the best talent and pathways and all the rest of it. Rugby's still a really, really small game in the UK. It's tiny in comparison to what football is.
You were saying, obviously, in terms of like rugby being a game for all shapes and sizes and stuff. Do you find even back when you were that age, is there a specific like sort of person that are going? Are you seeing more like forwards, props, fly-offs? Is there any sort of specific?
Is there a pattern to...
Is there a pattern to sort of these kids at a younger age, what positions they want to play in?
Like in football, when I really want to score goals.
Yeah,
I want to be a goalkeeper.
Well, yeah, everybody wants to play fly-off or, whatever. But I think at an early age, I started as an 8, then I was a 6. Then I got slowly moved forward as they realised I'd reached my heights at 5'10" and 3/4. But I think probably more the bigger thing with rugby is where the players come from. So it's a massive private school game. It's not played in state schools.
One thing Eddie Jones was very vocal about, throwing back to him. He was very vocal, wasn't he, about removing that
exactly
stigma, or whatever you want to call it, away.
So I was quite fortunate that I went to a state school and was just playing for a local club, but that obviously then was on the county pathway and whatever, and ended up at a private school with a rugby scholarship. So I kind of got best of both worlds and learned to speak properly, which was a good bonus. But I guess it's less, thinking about my private school days, is you have lads there that were sort of, everybody wants to play 10. It's just you watch lads walking around a private school and they'll chuck a rugby ball around, whereas at a state school, every break time is football.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just the opportunities are greater, but I can't see that happening at many state schools where they're, in the cage or whatever they're called. Just get the rugby ball out.
Get the ball out.
Just be killed, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's like you said earlier, though, it's just an easier sport to just quickly set a game up. Like, say, stick jumpers down, job done.
Yeah.
Whereas rugby just isn't that in terms of... Obviously, we all went to normal school, as I'll call it, but nobody really played rugby, apart from in PE class. Nobody was really that interested. And there was one or two lads that did put their tie on, went out in the local town on a Saturday night with the brown shoes on, and that was it. It was such a small thing for us. Cricket was the same though. It's not just a rugby thing. Like, you had to go out and seek cricket, and if you wanted to play it, I don't know how you got involved. Obviously, at the club you play for, but rugby was the same. You had to go out and seek it, whereas football was just there, just in front of you for whatever reason. I don't think it's anything to do with schools, I suppose, but the private school thing, or the public school thing, should I say. Do you agree with Eddie Jones that it is something that needs to be broken down, or do you feel it's just the nature of the game?
I don't know. I think it's difficult, isn't it, to sort of... I kind of quite conscious about not having an opinion about everything, because I don't honestly...
Rare these days, isn't it?
Yeah. You are allowed to take permission to not have an opinion about something. It's a really good piece of advice.
It's a fresh outlook.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily know that, it's all bad or it's all good or whatever it is, but I just think that whatever happens, we need to improve opportunities for people outside of private or public schools, which is really difficult to do because of all the reasons that we said.
Whilst it's producing rugby players, it's going to be the way forward. Like, say, there's guys walking around with a rugby ball on their arm. If that's the successful way to do it, and England, I can't speak for other nations, but England has been relatively successful as a rugby nation. So they're going to keep doing that because that's how it works. And we've got our own system in the system in football, there's a system in cricket. While that's the thing, I agree with you. I don't necessarily think it's a bad or a good thing, but I've never been in the world. But there's been things on Sky with that documentary where they were getting people from inner cities to play on ex-cons, whatever, doing that sort of thing. So there's clearly a want to get more people playing rugby from different backgrounds, different areas, but they're not alone as a sport. That's the problem. That every sport wants it.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what came to mind as you were talking about it. Is rugby wants that, but do the kids want that? And there's a push and a pull to these things, right? We sort of need to decide where we want to go fishing, because if we try and spread ourselves too thin, I'm talking about I'm not really involved in the game at all now, but why would we try and go after the same category that England cricket are trying to go after, or athletics or whatever. And actually, athletics has done really well in really urban areas because it's much easier to build an athletics track than it is to maintain grass pitches, etc. Plus, there's loads of our talent in GB has come through that pathway. But the fishing is easiest in private schools because their kids are playing it 2-3 times a week and all the rest of it. So, you
fundamentally, the players are better anyway.
So you can see why they'd put their resources into it, right? Because it's easier to do that than it is to teach a whole band of new kids. Yeah. Right.
It's also the culture of the school. The school has a big say in it as well. They want to play rugby. They want to get rugby players through, and it's part of that. Same with cricket, I suppose. Same thing.
Curriculum.
Cricket has a similar image, I would say, in terms of not quite like rugby, but it has got an image.
Yeah.
Which has changed a little bit, and then it's always a bit different up north, I think, but what have you. But it's the school's culture as well. So whilst they're producing rugby players, it's going to be the same. I think it takes years to and like I say, it's eyeballs on the sport, and each sport is after eyeballs, and it's so difficult to get eyeballs.
In cricket, it's like you're just perceived as the posh lot, just because
and they haven't met you.
Exactly. But yeah, that's literally what you perceived as all through juniors into senior cricket.
But that was my perception of cricket, and then obviously I got to know Dan,
who don't play the game, have that opinion.
You go to Linden Club, which is the club he plays for, and it is brilliant. I've been to beer festival. There's met loads of great people. Not him, but in general.
Met Tarquin and
that was Cambridge the other week, and just met loads of great people, and it's awesome. And as I say, rugby club. You've had your own experiences at rugby club.
We have, yeah. So, but that was obviously, we're going to go slightly off track a bit, but you do tend to see like the initiations and things like that. What are you checking
Absolute layup to say got off on a tangent there, and you didn't. Absolute layup there to name of the show.
People know that we're doing that. But yeah, like the initiation side of it is something that was always a bit like strange, I thought. We saw it firsthand at Linden when Lincoln Rugby Club played there before they moved on to Netland, or out towards Netland now.
We had it at uni as well, so I played football at uni, but the Rugby Society had their initiations, and fuck me, was it on another level. Like, I thought ours was like pretty bad. I mean, we had to like streak through the Odeon like as footballers, but the rugby players were something else. Literally something else.
I can't say that's something that I'm particularly fond of. My memories of initiations, and having played for a few clubs, you have to do a few, but it is great at the same time. You know what I mean? So yeah, I totally get that, and you know, the drinking culture of rugby is a good thing and a bad thing. It's like drinking in the UK culture, which I know we're going to talk about later on. But you know, one of the best things about a rugby club is that after the game of somebody that's beating the shit out of you for 80 minutes,
you can have a pint with them.
You have a pint. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen in other sports, and that's really special.
And the other thing that doesn't happen in other sports, and we've spoken about it before, is you're actually allowed to sit with a beer watching the game as
with
well.
With an opposing fan. And not want them removed.
Not worry about having your head kicked in, which in football, that's where it's gone, like, well, it's never been a thing, has it? But it would never work.
Whenever I've been to local rugby, I've really enjoyed that aspect of it. So we've been obviously watching the game, drinking, whatever, and then everybody's come back. There might be the odd one or two that's taking that whey powder and not wanting a pint. Weirdos. But in general, the mood is really good, and they're all there. We're still drinking. The 2 hours after, and the room is still pretty full. I got caught out with that because they were doing this game where they were singing, and I was at the bar getting the round in, and it was getting louder and louder. And I don't know what they were singing, but it was getting louder and louder and louder. And I'm ordering the drinks, and the guy just winks at me as if to say, "You have no idea what's going on." I mean, I was fairly pissed. So I turned around, and everybody's on the table, and they're singing louder and louder because I'm not off the floor. So you just don't get that in other areas. So I got off the floor and they stopped singing immediately. Oh. Just thought it was my round. I thought they were just getting really rowdy. But the culture side of it, I see we will get onto it later. But the beer side of things, as long as it doesn't go too far, I think it's great. It's brilliant. Like football fans, and I am one, and I go all over the country watching my club. And sometimes there's an edge to it you just don't get in rugby. And if we could have more of that in ours, I'd be all the better for it.
Yeah. I just think that there's the special bit I was talking about, I'm just agreeing and repeating what you said, really. But I think that's the special bit about the game is it doesn't matter what club you support, what team you're watching. You can stand next to whoever you want, have a pint of them. Be like, oh, fucking hell, he melted your bloke. And there's a camaraderie in how tough the game
Common
is,
ground,
if you know what I mean. As the game's got more professional, it's not lost some of that on the pitch, but it is a lot of grudge matches and all that stuff. But generally speaking, it's pretty good out there.
There's so much I think football as a sport could learn from rugby, like just in general, like you say, that camaraderie off the pitch. Like I know, speaking, you'll take the piss out of me, but
Sunday morning.
Speaking, yeah, but it's Sunday football, Saturday football. Like if you've kicked 7 ups out of somebody, the likelihood is they'll probably start on you after the game or whatever.
Well, I've said
Chase the ref around the pitch.
One of the reasons, like in COVID, we obviously played together for a couple of years just before COVID, and it was great. We had a great group of lads, but you did tend to get the feeling that there was some people on the opposition that weren't bothered if they broke your leg or not, and it's like, really, I've got to go to work next week, and that's kind of got to that stage. I was like, I can't be arsed for this anymore. I just pull away from that side of it.
Well, the obvious famous quote is it's a gentleman's game played by thugs and a thug's game played by gentlemen, and I think it's exactly right on and off the pitch.
Amen, brother.
Twickenham's come under fire a bit last couple of years for the drinking culture. I've noticed. I've seen a lot of that. It might just be talk sport saying things loudly, but about obviously people getting really drunk and in some of the lesser games, as it were, and less of a rugby crowd as rugby fans would know it, and more of just a sort of a day tripper thing. I mean, is that a thing in rugby circles?
Well, the last time I went to Twickenham was when England got dicked by France at the Six Nations, and I think I touched 25 pints of Guinness. So I'm pretty sure...
What a day.
Yeah, it was a tough day afterwards. But I want that on my tombstone, because I don't actually particularly like Guinness or drinking. But it was the done thing to do. I think that because RFU, England Rugby Inc., as in the brand of that, is so corporate and commercial, you're paying £160 a ticket if you want to go and watch England at Twickenham, which you can argue whether that's good value or not, but that's pushed a lot of your average Joe rugby fans out, and for the right reason. That's a lot of money to go and spend, because it's not just that, is it? It's your 25 pints of Guinness, it's your
whole
train
day
tickets, it's all the rest of it.
How many pints of Guinness?
Moving on,
25.
He had 7 pints of Star Prime last week. Couldn't see for a week.
I think so sort of I suppose what I'm trying to get across is you're attracting a certain type of
it changes,
crowd.
doesn't it?
And there's also the large majority of that is the benchers, boxers, people with...
It's exactly the same with Lords at cricket, or going for a day out at the cricket.
I've been to one cricket game in my life, and the atmosphere was pants.
Yeah.
Was it a Lords?
It does depend on what you're going to watch, I suppose. But in terms of like day one or the Ashes, for example, that ticket price has been driven through the ceiling based on the fact it's a captive market, but also it's been driven, like I say, by a certain clientele that will pay that. And if he can get that, he's going to push the nose of Joe Bloggs.
I paid a lot for my Ashes ticket last year. I can't remember exactly what it was. We got half a day's cricket.
It'd have been 3 figures.
Oh, easily, yeah, easily. And I got half a day because of the rain.
If you see that as good value for money, then that's fine. But
it is going to change the demographic for sure.
I think so. And again, right or wrong, I don't know. But it's unfortunately, it's not necessarily. I guess as well that because rugby is, there's lots of people that support England, right, but don't have a team. So they're not like passionate rugby fans. They just want to see England play in the Six Nations. That's very different to somebody that turns out for Lincoln RFC week in, week out, rain or shine. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So it's a different type of fan anyway. Whereas if you have, any of you been to Millennium?
Yeah.
Like
not for rugby, but for
football.
Yeah.
Okay, so rugby's major in Wales.
It's a religion.
Yeah, every single person there wants Wales to win. Has like grown up with it. They're from the valleys. They're whatever. Not all of them are from the valleys, but just in case there are any Welsh listeners, as I said, I'm Welsh. It is such a different atmosphere because they're passionate Welsh fans that probably have a much heavier involvement in the game back in their communities. The large portion of those people going to Twickenham they want a day out or they want to support England.
It's very noticeable actually when you cross over the border. You do start to see more rugby sticks as you cross over. It is quite noticeable into that country. It is. I used to work with a load of. There's quite a big when I was at the last brewery I worked for. They've got a big Welsh contingent there. Their head office is in there and that sort of stuff. Not the head office, the one of the big telesales things there. So you just go to Wales quite a bit to Cardiff. Incredible. They just live and breathe it. A couple of Welsh colleagues, they're absolutely mad for it. Next to the Millennium Stadium, there's another. The Cardiff Blues play there, literally next door. So you've got a big rugby stadium and then a tiny rugby stadium. It's like, how much do you want to watch rugby that you put one stadium next to another? Incredible.
The road signs are a lot wider as well.
They have to be. They have to be, unfortunately, yeah.
Just for some context, that was the old...
I know, it was there. It was where he used to play, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Before they built the Millennium.
Yeah. There you go.
But yeah, I don't know how good the Cardiff Blues are. Are they any good?
Yeah.
The Premiership side?
So no, Welsh teams play in the URC.
Oh, okay.
So they play in the league with Welsh teams, Scottish teams, Irish teams, Italian teams, and now South African teams.
I just heard a rugby fan listen to this yell at his radio when I said that, so that was always enjoyable. I could hear them having a right go at me there. Never mind. You're here to learn.
Yeah.
We're here to learn.
Aren't we all?
That comes on to our next bit about learning. So you were a loose head, a tight head, and a hooker.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Cheers, Wikipedia. Nailed it. Started at Dorking.
Yeah.
Then went to London Welsh.
Yeah.
Exeter Chiefs.
Yeah.
Tigers.
Yeah.
And then completed your career at Dragons.
Yes.
So you said earlier you were moved around in position-wise. You said it's unique earlier to play three positions and be adequate and good at all those positions. Was that something came easy to you?
Well, yeah, I never said I was good at all three. No,
I did say adequate to start with.
Yeah,
I thought I'd ease you in.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I think
so. What's the? Honestly, we know nothing. So talk us through those three positions for those that are listening that don't know rugby. Talk us through the difference in the positions.
Sure. So at the front of a scrum, you have three blokes: number one, number two, number three. The one on the left is the loose head, and he will bind to the hooker, which is the guy in the middle that binds onto both of them. And the guy on the right, this is if you're looking behind them, obviously, is the tight head. So the tight head goes against two people, the hooker goes against two people, and the loose head goes against one person. It's not like you're going against one person, but that's just the way you put your heads. Major difference is your hookers are generally much more like a fourth back row player now. So, run around an extra ball carrier. They throw the ball into the line out. Your tight head is traditionally just a mutant that will just hold down the scrum and not do a lot else. And your loose head will be somewhere between the two that can sort of do some damage at the scrum, but also do some ball carrying stuff in between. So back to the first bit, I think really for me, I came through as a hooker, I guess, because I was a ball carrier. That's what I was generally better at, was carrying the ball. But I wasn't ever a fantastic thrower. Partly learnt this in later life was because I felt like I was very overly technically coached about like where my thumbs needed to be, what I needed to do with my wrist, what I needed to do with my eyes. It was all very technical, and I'm quite a thinker, and I'm much better to learn something by feel. And actually, after not playing hooker for a few years and just picked up a ball and threw it, I was much more comfortable. And then an opportunity came up to play tight head because there was a couple of injuries at Tigers, and Cockers was like, "Oh mate, I know you've done it in the past, like at age group and stuff. You jump in there for us, no judgment." And actually went all right. And then I think Coley came back from England duty, and Logo was back from injury or whatever, and then we lost two other guys on the loose head side, and actually ended up staying over there. So it's more, I think, by accident than by design. But in my head, I just knew that if I could get on the pitch, I could pick a ball up and I could have an impact on a game, and that would help me and the team and. So I just wanted to be on the pitch, and I'd play to fly off if somebody let me. But
Grab that ball and drive.
Yeah, exactly.
Brutal. You're going to have to tell me, as a former rugby professional and clearly a lover of the sport, why the hell do you do line-outs? You're all massive. Who come up with that?
What, lifting each other up?
What's mental in it? I watch more rugby now than I've ever watched, just because of, I don't know, thirst for sport, whatever. But I think it's mental every time. That was good. I enjoy that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I worked for a corporate company for 3 years. I could chuck that in every now and then. But I look at it and think, that's mental. That's crazy. What?
Well, I guess the thing with rugby is there's competition for the ball at all points, isn't there? And if you think about football, there's the throw in, and it's kind of, you throw it to the bloke, he kicks it back to the guy who threw it in, and then you move on.
Away we go.
Yeah. There might be a bit of competition, there's like a bit of elbows and whatever, but it's not competition. And I think what rugby is great at is it's really difficult to get the ball all the time, and you got to work really hard to get the ball and keep it and then score with it, you know?
It looks hilarious because you're all so massive. Big tall guys being lifted up. Incredible. And the premise behind it makes sense. I just thought it was hilarious. So were you in the line? Were you lifting people?
So, yeah, I would have lifted.
Yeah.
Because obviously you want to lift the long people rather than
the naturally, people. Yeah. the 6'9".
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Surprise. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's gone off his head.
Actually, you could redesign the game there, really, couldn't you? Because if you think about it, if they chuck up a really long bloke and you chuck up a
Send
short
a midget
bloke,
in.
He's not going to be able to catch it down by his knees while he's shooting up, is he?
Changing the game. One podcast at a time.
I love it. Where's Eddie?
Eddie Jones. That is honestly, that's 90%, right? That's as good. Yours was pretty good as well, actually.
Thank you.
You did more sentences as well, which is a thing.
You're sticking at just his name.
It's what you're good at. That's all I know. In terms of those names I listed earlier, other than Dorking, because I don't know a Dorking, down south somewhere, way down south. Way down
It's
south?
not way down south, is it?
Is it?
It's Essex, isn't it?
No,
That's
sorry.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Good geography.
It's okay.
Not big on where Surrey is.
Southwest of the M25.
Okay. That's pretty south for us. I know all them names. There's some big clubs there. So you've had a hell of a career.
Oh, well, I think I did okay.
Nearly 200 appearances?
Yeah.
Wikipedia's right.
Yeah, to be honest, I have never counted.
Well, Wikipedia's got you at 196, I think.
Oh, well, I'll get someone to update. I don't even know who does those. I assume
you can edit yourself, so just go on and just say
350.
350, famous for lineouts, changed the game, foremost Eddie Jones impersonator. I'll edit mine as well.
Yeah, look, I think looking back on the career, I feel very lucky to have done it for as long as I did. Finishing on my own terms was great as well. I suppose the thing I do look back on is I left Exeter, they won the league. I left Leicester, they won the league. So your smart money is on Dragons, who haven't won the URC ever, to my knowledge. But yeah, I feel like it was great to play for some cool teams and play against some really cool teams in some awesome parts of the world. But I don't remember loads and loads of games. I really remember the lads that I did it with and my mates that I've hopefully got for life. And yeah, feel super lucky. That's
pretty special, mate, to be fair. To have that as an experience, as your job. Yeah. We've got a bit in beer, to be fair. I know we're going to beer later, but we've got a bit in beer. I mean, I've made so many friends in the scene. I mean, I've been selling beer for 15 years now, and I've got lifelong friends. I do a podcast with that Urbit in the corner. I met you a bit before beer, to be fair.
Yeah, we go a bit further back than that, but
I was met you as well, but not through beer.
Cricket's the same in terms of like you feel like you're part of a family. It can become global. Like I went to Oz and played over there, and I feel like I've got a cricket family over there as well as over here, and they've come over here and we've been over there, and it's just. It's very, very special when you're part of a group of like-minded people, and that team element as well, like we spoke about, is you can't put price on it. It's amazing.
But that's what sport is amazing for. Opportunities like that. Like there's not many jobs in the world where you can go, I'm just going to give it a crack in Australia for a bit. Do you know what I mean? And in my former job, that pretty much introduced me to you guys and Rob. Do you know what I mean? But otherwise, I'm like everybody else that has got to do that stuff. So I think if there's anything to take away from this bit of the conversation is, regardless of all the things we said about rugby, good or bad or indifferent, playing sport is awesome for opportunities and networks and just life. It's really, really good.
Two things I'll never understand. People that don't like booze and the whole thing around booze and sport. I don't get, but my mum doesn't get sport at all. Doesn't like it, doesn't get it, doesn't understand why me and my dad travel all over the country watching. I mean, we take a bit too far, but in general. And I said, well, if you just take away my allegiance to Leeds, if England rugby are on the telly and it's Saturday night and it's a semi-final or something, why would you not want to watch that? And cricket's the same. Just amount of sport matches that I get engrossed into. Well, sometimes I ain't even got a dog in the fight, but just the drama of it.
But it's the moments it can provide as well, right? Hugely. So it's like it's the fear, like fear of missing out is a big thing. Like, and obviously, if you constantly putting yourself in that position where you're going to see something amazing happen, or people that don't follow sport or don't like it, it's like
it's madness.
Don't get how you can.
So I hate golf, but I still watch the Ryder Cup because it's a battle between not two nations, as it were. There's a reason to watch it, and it's awesome. I can't stand golf. I wouldn't put golf on normally, but I'm watching the Ryder Cup. It probably says more about me than it does anything else. But in terms of sport, the booze thing I get because people don't all drink, but it's the same feeling to me. I get the same feeling in the pub with the lads pre-game. All that, I hate that word, but banter, whatever, you're flying around, and then you go and watch your team lose, that sort of thing. But the whole thing of it is amazing. I went to a 60th birthday on Saturday for a guy I've only ever met through football. The only reason I know him, there's no other reason why we'd know each other. And then I'm there with my wife, and we're there for his 60th birthday. And the only thing that's brought us together is the football club. It's the only reason we're in the same room. But thick as thieves, we'd do anything for him, we'd do anything for me. It's that sort of thing. It's incredible how it can bring you into it and bring you together. I just don't get why you don't like it.
Sport's great. Booze is great. Combine the two, and it's absolutely phenomenal, isn't it?
You've got perfection.
It's like, oh god, yeah.
Other than its beautiful flavour, that is literally why Guinness was invented. Because that is your in the Sunday in the pub, the fire's on, this whatever on the telly, sport, Guinness, innit? A part of Guinness or craft beers. We'll go on to later. Can you give us a day in the life of a professional rugby player?
Wake up at 7ish, head into the club, get your breakfast, check in you'll have done a little well-being questionnaire. Are you tired today?
Yeah, they're fairly modern, aren't they?
Yeah. Are you tired? Yeah. Are you sore? Yeah. Are you whatever? Yeah. Okay.
Of course I am.
Full contact training for you. Work your way around. You might have a meeting to start the day. Let's take a Tuesday, for example, which is always like the biggest day. Depending on your split, you might have weights first. So you got an hour in the gym, then you go and have your forward session, which would be about an hour to get filled in. Come back in, have lunch for about an hour, chill out for a bit. Team meeting, get you all riled up to go and kick another 10 bells out of each other. Head back out for a team session, which from 1 until 2:30. By the time you sort of wound down, get some treatment. Head home at 4:00, have dinner, day off on Wednesday.
Do it all again.
Yeah, exactly. But it's less about the average day. It's more about how they build a week. So say, for example, you've played the Saturday before. You'd have the Sunday off. Monday would be like weights and recovery and a bit of a flush run. Flush as in not full speed running. Tuesday's the day I just described. That's your contact day. Some teams... There's a big debate in rugby at the moment, if anybody's interested, whether you do the third day on or you have that off. That third day might be like your team stuff, where you go team on team, run all your moves that you're trying to do at the weekend and all the rest of it. You have your Thursday off. Friday is your captain's run through all your plays. Everybody feels like amazing. We could beat anybody. Yeah, everything works. Play again on Saturday and then cycle round. It's how they periodise a week, and then you do that. What's really difficult about rugby particularly is the contact and the injuries, and working that through with soreness. That's all fine to do and hold a certain threshold for the first few months of the year. But then when you've got 15, 20 games under your bank and you need people to be fresh, go heading into semi-finals and finals, you got to know when to back off. And that's really tough, because if you back off too much, you'll be undercooked to the weekend, etc.
Had you seen more? Obviously, you said earlier, and you're correct, rugby is a very technical sport, and to the outside looking, very complicated. Did you see it as you went through your professional career, it changed a lot in terms of video work and analysis? Had that changed a lot, or has it always been there? Or
no, the analysis changed a fair amount. Yeah, I would say that I think there's far too much training. Personally, I think for lads that are knocking over 30 that are expected to run around like they do and all the rest of it is really challenging to be able to keep that intensity of training up and play at weekends. But that's just a personal preference, and that's how I played at a weekend meant I was sorer during the week, if that makes sense. I mean, probably should have tried less hard at the weekends.
I suppose you're all pros, aren't you? So you're already at top of your game, as it were. So more technical stuff makes sense, really. And less physical stuff in the week when you're going to go run for a brick wall on a weekend.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the tough thing about the game, is very concerned about concussion and where that's going.
Yeah.
So the amount of contact that you have during a week, and you do need contact to be contact conditioned so that you don't get hurt. But what the balance is of getting enough that's not too much is really tough. And thankfully, I don't need to figure that out anymore.
Do you see the Lions as the pinnacle of either pinnacle of rugby or pinnacle of this hemisphere? What's your vision? We'll talk about the other week on a podcast that there was. I'd overheard a rugby conversation on the radio about how it should go, as it's a very old tradition, should go. And I was saying to these guys, as much as I'm not a rugby fan, as it were, I love watching the Lions. I think it's great, and it's the documentary on it are amazing. What's your thoughts on Lions?
It's an amazing, really cool thing to do and be part of from mates I know that have done it. But I bet if you asked most lads, would you rather win a Lions Test series or win the World Cup? They'd rather win the World Cup. So that probably tells you what's more important. But I think that it's quite a unique thing in sport, right, to get nations coming together to go and take things on, and it is so historic that I can't ever see that going, to be honest. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
It feels incredibly difficult to me to get, because when you watch it, obviously there's people from different nations come together and they play. That must be really difficult for the head coach to get that pulled together, because you've obviously got not so much the element of beating lumps at each other in Six Nations that may have just gone, or the World Cup that's just gone, or what have you, but just different rugby styles and different coaches at their national level, and to pull all that together. When you're watching the documentary, it does seem incredibly tough, which is why they don't win many tours, I don't think, do they?
Well, I think,
tough.
Most recent example is Gats, Warren Gatland. He had his Welsh style, and when they won in Australia, he picked 12 out of 15 Welshmen to play the deciding test. And yeah, that's kind of what happens, really, is you end up with coaches that pick the players that they know that can play those positions.
Yeah, it's just I as a spectacle, I love it. I think it's fantastic. But that you have answered the question there, that if they do prefer to win the World Cup, probably tells you where it is in the pecking order. What about club rugby? Obviously, you've got the league within itself, and then you've got the Champions League style for the European clubs.
Yeah.
Where does that sit?
Yeah, so it's Premiership, Europe, national, like playing for England.
I was going to name the sponsor of the Champions League style, but I remember it's a brewer I never worked for, so I can't name one here. It's called the Blank Cup.
I don't know if it
is changed
anymore either, because they sponsored
That's
it for
petty,
years.
that, isn't it?
And then they realised that they could pull out of it, and everybody still calls it that cup. Anyway.
It's the Carling Cup. As it has been for years.
Yeah.
So is it the same there? So its pinnacle would be what? The league, or the pinnacle is said European Cup? Obviously, international's the pinnacle, isn't it?
Yeah, so for a club player, if you don't play international, the best you can do is win Europe, yeah. Which would be all right, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then in terms of you playing domestically here, I know there was a how do I describe it? So obviously you weren't allowed to play for England if you played in France. Did you have any offers to go and play in France?
I did. I did have an offer to go and play in France, and I sometimes wonder whether I should have gone. It much more suited to my style of game, to be honest.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Playing off 9 more than playing off the scrum half rather than the fly half. Sorry, trying to.
You're dumbing it down.
Dumbing it down for the Dumbos.
Yeah, I was thinking of an expression.
Slag us off, Greg. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would have suited. And I've always enjoyed playing against French teams. Felt like it suited me better. But life and all those sorts of things. It's challenging. But there's lots of reasons to go and play in France, and there's lots of reasons to not go and play in France as well.
Thank you for joining us on this Whatever Floats Your Goat special of the Gone Off on a Tangent podcast. New episodes released every single Thursday to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you got this one. We have merch available, beanie hats ready for the winter, available from thetipsyimp.co.uk, £20, all going to charity. Part 2 is available next week, where we'll discuss Greg's life away from rugby. Thanks for downloading.
This